So there's a lot of things along those lines. I know that there's other folks, and I know there's candidates in the other room that, you know, as I was one once, they want to get in here. They want to be able to tell you their story. So I don't want to, you know, impinge on their ability to do that too much. But if anybody has any questions. Oh, by the way, yes, the other thing is the mailer. Val always reminds me of something I forgot. For any of you guys, you get our mailings in the past. They're kind of busy and they don't make a lot of sense. Well, one of the big changes that I made, and I can take credit for things once in a while, moving forward, that big mailer you get in and around election time, the voter notice, and it's got a million things all over it. We're going to print that mailer in the languages that are required in the districts that they are required in. So rather than print a 5-language mailer for the entire city and mail it all over the place when it's not required, if your district requires 2 languages, you'll get it in English and Spanish. If your district requires 5 languages, you'll get it in 5 languages. But we're also going to change it so that the languages are separated within the book, so that you're not looking at a page if you read English like I do. Some people will question how well I speak it, but I read it, and you know, it won't be mixed in with all the other languages. As a start to that, this is going to be a sample of the mailer that folks are going to get, reminding them that there's a primary for the federal election. If you see what we did, which is a complete change, and it seems small, but it's a big deal. We have 6 boxes here. The box in the middle is purely informational. It has a QR code for folks that have QR readers and they want to be redirected to websites. They can do that. But then the individual boxes contain the information necessary in the language in each box. So this box is English. This is Spanish. I'm getting better. I know that's Chinese, and that's Korean, and that's Bengali. So the folks that need their stuff will look to where they need it, and they won't have to be mixed up with trying to, you know, decipher through 5 different languages in one spot. So again, a small thing on the one hand. You know, I guess every good idea seems like it was an easy idea to come up with, you know, after the fact, but it hadn't been done before, and we're doing it now. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to do moving forward. Go ahead.
Since you bring that up,
right.
I wasn't even thinking about that. The bigger problem is that people are getting notices about a primary when there is no primary for that particular person, depending on what party they happen to be enrolled in. So
right.
They show up and they say they want to vote. We say there is no Republican primary at this school.
Right.
And they've already made the trip. Is there not a way to only send those notices out?
That's what this is, and it's only supposed to go, and any big system there could always be a screw up, but it's only supposed to go to those places where there is actually a primary on that date. So now, one of the things that we got criticized in the past for was not sending notices to anybody. And then there were some folks that told us that we should send notices to everybody, even if they don't have a primary, and tell them, oh, by the way, you don't have a primary. Well, I said, no way am I going to sign off on a purchase order. You know, when you talk about we have, and we're working on right-sizing, as I'll call it, the voter rolls, because we know that there are people on there that don't belong there. But presently, we have about 4.3 million registered voters. I'm not authorizing a piece of mail to go out to 4.3 million people when only 1.2 million needed for this primary. So I'm not spending money on 3 million pieces of mail that we don't need. So if that's happening, we do need that feedback. No, what I'm saying is, Val, what I'm saying is, if it's happening that you're aware of instances where somebody got a primary notice erroneously, we need that feedback, because it's not supposed to be happening. And you know, we rely on the computers to filter.
It's not necessarily that there isn't a primary
right.
at school.
Right.
Not for the party that they're
right.
enrolled.
It's only supposed to be, it's party specific, and it's election district and assembly district specific if the system works right.
Since the 1970s, we've had September primaries. We now have a June primary for congressional districts. Do you favor June primaries for the state senate and the state assembly, and is there a chance it'll be passed soon, so we'll have all the primaries in June with time to work toward the general election?
Well, I can answer the question this way without ducking it, all right? I answer to a board of commissioners, so I don't get to say what I think is right. I get to say what the commissioners have ruled on. In the past, the commissioners favored, on the record, and sent it up to Albany, a June primary. They've refined their ruling recently by saying that they prefer a consolidated primary with at least 80 days in between the primary and the general. So I guess the short answer is we want it on one date. Whether it's June or count backwards 80 days from the November general, sometime between those two date ranges, and that's going to be something that the state legislature needs to coalesce around. I know that there seems to be some disagreement between the two houses in Albany over which date they prefer. I know that the Assembly came out and passed a bill that said that they wanted to consolidate to the June date. The state Senate seems to be leaning somewhere more along an August date. And I guess the politics and the messiness of democracy will eventually resolve itself, and we'll have a date. We're a ministerial agency. We have to, if the legislature sets a date, we have to put on an election. We don't get to say, you know what, it's not convenient, we're not showing up. We actually have to do it. So, yeah, one date would be better. We go first to back. I'll get to everybody.
Okay. As someone who's going to be involved in the June federal primary, I'm concerned in terms of the issue with the font size that you mentioned.
Right.
In part, whether or not that's going to take effect with the June primary, and then secondly,
June, you better. Because, see, this is an actual sample ballot from June, and I'm sorry I defiled it, but this is actually the sample ballot for June. It's already done, and it's 12.
it's 12?
So June is an easy one because there's a limited number of contests on the, right? And we have all of that room.
Okay.
The challenge that we have in the bigger elections is the more candidates, and then on the citywides with the parties and independent bodies. We had 20, I think, ballot lines for mayor.
Yes.
This past go around. So, that paper starts to fill up real quick. So, your second piece of your question?
Historically, we've had very low voter turnout, and I know that you're responsible for the administrative piece. In the last federal election in June of 2012, there was less than 6% of the voting population within the Democratic Party that turned out to vote. It appears as if there was not any additional effort made by the Board of Elections, and I'm wondering as to what is the extent of the responsibility of the Board of Elections to make sure that the people are fully aware, maybe with more than one effort, because the initial mailer may be seen and then tossed aside. I'm wondering if there's going to be an effort to re-emphasize the fact that there is a June primary, and most people are accustomed to the September primary. So this is something altogether new for them. So I'm wondering what extra efforts are going to be made.
Go ahead, you could ask.
I'm Valerie Vasquez, Director of Communications. There will be at least 3 legally required ads that will go out in various publications in the covered languages in advance of the election. The week before, informing voters that there is in fact a primary. We urge everyone, because that's a blanket, goes out to anyone who reads that publication. We urge them to visit our website, call our phone bank, or visit our poll site locator to see if we have a primary. There'll be one the day of, and also in advance of the election, generally around 5 days before, a candidates list will appear. That'll list all the candidates that are on the ballot for the primary itself.
And that will be in publications,
That'll be in
not
publications.
from the Board of Elections.
Well, it's paid for by the Board of Elections.
It's a legally required notice.
Not a mailing.
We're doing the one mailer.
Yes, the one our executive director referenced, that mailing will go out to all registered voters who have a primary, and it will go out the first week of June.
Now, the other thing that we learned from the Bipartisan Presidential Commission report on the administration of elections that came out in January, is one of the problems is we find that we found it, and the report confirms it, people don't go to government websites for government-related information. They find it other ways. So, you know, we have a wealth of information on our website, and we're just finding that the traffic is not where we want it to be. So we're working with a consultant to try to come up with a better way to drive people to where the information is. But that's not something that just happens overnight. One of the vexing problems that we're having is we want to have alternate ways for people to communicate with us, but we have to collect the emails, right? We don't have a sufficient number of emails on hand to be confident that if we send out a blast email, that everybody's going to get it. So we're kind of in that trap between doing what we have to do legally required and then bridging the gap with the next generation of communication.